Okay, boys, we've been meaning to make this video for some time now. I put out a video like 2 weeks ago. I said, hey, Not Forgotten, is it worth the grind? Essentially, fellas, I said, yeah, it's definitely worth the grind. It's a better version than Luna's Howl, and it looks better. And in the Destiny universe, that is a nasty combination, and one of which will make many of us lose our sanity, because we want the best looking gear, and we want the best gear. Now, today's match that I wanted to showcase is actually a match against ZkMushroom and PureChill. I wanted to show these guys because these are the caliber players you're going to be running against. Like, the closer and closer you get to Legend, the more you're going to see of these guys, as well as other really top tier players. Things do not get easier the closer you get to Legend, so it's going to progressively get harder and harder. So I'm going to break today's video up into 3 different points. Number 1, we're going to talk about loadouts, and loadouts is anything from what you're using in your weapon slots, as well as these subclasses that you're going to be rocking, and what are the most popular ones here in the later parts of the competitive playlist. I also want to talk about how the matches are normally going to go. And what I mean by that, what are the type of players that you're actually going to be playing against? What's their mentality? And why being perfect is almost going to be essential for you to win out in these matches. And the third point, we're actually going to talk about when the best time might be to play the competitive playlist. Yeah, there's actually kind of a better time to play the playlist, as well as like a rule I have for myself of when to get out of the competitive playlist. Because the last thing you want to do with all the time you're about to invest to get to Legend is to work backwards some days. You want to make sure no matter what, even if it's a small incremental bump there in your rank, you want to keep making those strides forward, little by little. So first up, let's talk about the loadout. Right after you reach Luna's Howl, you're going to receive a quest that you have to get a number of Luna Howl kills. So obviously, you're going to want to be rocking out Luna in this situation, but for a number of reasons. I mean, Luna's a very good gun. It's a very good time to kill. And the closer and closer you get to Legend, the more players you're going to run up against that are rocking Not Forgotten. So I would highly suggest that you keep rocking Luna's Howl and you get really, really good with it. Now, not surprising, most of your gunfights are probably going to be shotgun fights. Like, I would say a good 70 to 75% of your fights will be shotgun battles. So having a good kinetic shotgun will make all the difference. This was where I was lacking the most, where I felt like I was hurting the most. I was still trying to rock out something like a Balligant, which is a year 1 shotgun. And yes, it can map at times, but the inconsistency there made me outright unreliable in all of my shotgun duels. So a Dust Rock Blues is your best bet. Farm it there on the Lost Sector at the EDZ. That's actually a better method than the one I presented there on Mars. But in these later parts of the competitive playlist, you have got to have a good rolled kinetic shotgun. Now, I know someone's going to ask, what about those mid-range engagements? Maps like Eternity and other maps that spread the game out? I will say this, I try to take the same approach. I was like, yeah, I'll rock a pulse rifle. Unfortunately, in this situation, everyone is so good at cutting corners and keeping engagements close enough for their Not Forgotten or Luna's Howl that I was at a heavy disadvantage trying to rock something out like a pulse rifle. Like, the level of aping is nothing I've ever experienced like in the later parts of the competitive playlist. So my suggestion on those maps where things start to spread out is everyone still rock the same loadout. A Luna's Howl, a shotgun, except one person. One person on your team needs to be rocking a good kinetic sniper. And I would tell that person to just hit bodies. Like, they don't even have to go for the crits. Again, you want them to just help with all of the team engagements, so just landing a couple body shots will go a long way here. Now, this takes us to our next point. What are the subclasses you're going to be seeing the most of, and what subclass should you be rocking? First up, Blade Barrage and Nova Warp will probably be the most common subclasses you see. Arguably the 2 best supers in the game. Number 1, Blade Barrage can easily shut down other supers while also getting multi-kills. And Nova Warp is just all around probably the hardest super to go against and shut down. So those will be probably the most common subclasses you're going to run up against. But I do want to mention here, the competitive playlist is not a playlist to start learning how to main a certain subclass. What I mean by that, if you don't play Nova Warp, I would not suggest the competitive playlist being the first playlist you load it out in. So if you've got a subclass that you feel the most comfortable with, I still feel the most comfortable with hammers. Now, here on console, I definitely know I'm at a disadvantage with hammers. Like, if I don't get the jump out of Nova Warp, they will eat me up all day long. But out of all the subclasses, it's the one I've invested the most hours into, so therefore, I'm a lot more comfortable with it. So don't feel like you have to go in there and rethink the wheel. Choose whatever you have the most experience with. Now, let's talk about how these matches are going to go. Now, this match you see in front of you, we ultimately ended up losing. Feel free to timestamp down below where we went wrong, where you think we went wrong, and I'll actually put down a timestamp and pin it where I felt like we went wrong. But I mentioned before that you have to be almost perfect, if not perfect, to beat teams like this. And the reason for that is that there's certain positions we put ourselves in on a map. Maybe it's times when we over pursue. Maybe it's just in an open lane for too long. In many competitive games, especially before you get into Mythic, you could get away with that. Against these players, and many that you face, the closer and closer you get to Legend, they will always capitalize on your mistakes. Always. And they will punish you. So staying disciplined and not doing those things that we talked about in our Luna's Howl video, not over pursuing, not pushing in spawn points that you shouldn't be pushing into. Always engaging with your team, making sure you're never getting split spawn, spawning up together, regrouping. All of those things are crucial elements that you have got to get down and remain disciplined with, because if you don't, you will be punished severely. I know I just like laid the stress anchor on everyone. I'm not trying to stress any of you guys out, but that's just how these guys are. Not only do they capitalize on your mistakes, they never fatigue mentally. Now, what I mean by that, if you notice some of your other games you've played, when you get really up in the score, or you got a lot of rounds on the enemy, or you're just outright outslaying them, you'll notice like toward the end of the game, they mentally give out. They've given up. They start putting themselves in positions. They don't care. They already say, hey, we've lost the match. Do not count on that reaction to ever happen against these players. All they're thinking about is the previous one they just lost, or the previous encounter they just lost, why they lost it, and how they can avoid making that mistake again. Again, the game more or less turns into who can make the least amount of mistakes. So they don't care about the score. They don't care about how many rounds they got on you, which is why you see so many comeback wins that these top tier players pull off, because mentally they don't fatigue. Oh, believe me, it's hell. I'm like, just lose already, but just always expect everyone to be going for it, like their lives depend on it. Now, you probably noticed in this match, none of us are picking up power ammo. This is like a gentleman's rule, and I would highly suggest everyone adopt it, because I don't like power ammo in the competitive playlist to begin with. But sending a brief message to the enemy team before the match starts and saying, hey, no power, is a great way to develop relationships. It's a great way to enjoy the competitive playlist, because power, in my opinion, ruins it. I would highly suggest you guys try that out. You'll notice that you'll enjoy your matches a lot more, even against really good players that you think are just outslaying you to begin with. Power wouldn't help you in those situations either way it goes. They would just get power and outslay you even more. But I very much enjoyed this gentleman's rule that's present in the competitive playlist, especially in the later parts of the ranks. Now, this takes us to our final point. When is the best time to actually be hitting up competitive? And what is my rule? What is the rule that I have when playing comp? First off, let me just bring up the rule I have. Number one, if I lose 2 consecutive games in a row, I'm done. I'm done for the day. I'm leaving. Maybe not done for the whole day, but I'm taking a good long break. Now, I did not always follow this rule, which means Aztecross made life on himself much tougher. It's okay if you lose 2 games, but when you start losing back-to-back games, boys, I would highly suggest take a lunch break. So that's kind of my rule that I now have, especially in those later ranks. Now, the best time to go for it. My Discord is convinced, and we've got a lot of competitive players in our Discord that are constantly pulling groups together. They are convinced Saturday morning is the best time to do competitive. For me, I always felt that Friday night into Saturday morning was when the competitive playlist had the most amount of players in it, but not too sweaty. So I think I always made my best strides in terms of getting my rank up. Now, the time to not play it, I would not suggest playing it on reset, because the only people you're going to find in the competitive playlist are PvP sweaties. Now, I'm not saying you should just outright avoid people, but yeah, I was avoiding groups. I was avoiding PureChill in them as much as I possibly could, because playing them feels like you just played 10 matches. So again, this is more of a marathon and not necessarily a sprint, so I would not suggest burning out playing just the sweatiest of the sweat. Somebody's got to play them, and I'd rather that somebody be someone else. So guys, those are my tips for getting to Legend. Is Not Forgotten obtainable? Absolutely. I know some people were expecting a different reaction, but I definitely believe Luna's Howl is obtainable, and I definitely believe Not Forgotten is obtainable. Now, the amount of stress it's going to bring forward is much more than what the stress was from Luna's Howl. Actually, at some points, you'll probably begin to get obsessed with Not Forgotten. I did. I was like, I've got to have this gun. And it wasn't even about the gun anymore. It was just, there was a milestone there in front of me that I had to achieve, but not one that has to be achieved tomorrow. Again, fellas, this is one that you can stretch out weeks and weeks to come. And from what I'm being told, the quest is not going to go away next season. This is something that's going to remain even next season. So set up a goal. Similar to Luna's Howl, I would do something like 500 points a week. Sure, it'll take you 7 weeks, but you won't lose your sanity. So I hope this video helps you out. Again, if you're not part of my Discord, feel free to check it out. It's in the description below. But a lot of guys I've been seeing hitting it up every Saturday morning, and they're kind of doing the same thing I said. They're just turning it into a week-to-week thing where they just go in there and get a set amount of points. So fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.